A well-known failed political candidate from the Democrat Party is continuing to point fingers, come up with excuses, and try to force her way back into politics. No, I'm not talking about Hillary Clinton. Even as a number of people have recently been arrested for voter fraud, Stacey Abrams, another failed candidate from the Democrat Party who lost her race for governor of Georgia, she is joining the mainstream media and other Democrats in claiming that the problem of voter fraud does not exist. Stacey Abrams was just in Iowa to argue against a new voter ID law that would stop voter fraud. President Trump has regularly addressed the problem of voter fraud and has been attacked by the mainstream media and other Democrats, regularly told that voter fraud does not exist and to even investigate the problem would somehow be unfair to Democrats at the same time. Brenda Snipes of Broward County was a regular target of President Trump's criticism. There was a lot of suspicious activity during the midterm race and other elections that Brenda Snipes oversaw. Meanwhile, countless mainstream media articles attempted to argue against the president, saying that President Trump was alleging fraud in Broward and Palm Beach voting without any evidence. Meanwhile, in this very picture, this protester has a picture of Brenda Snipes and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Brenda Snipes was spotted at one of Debbie Wasserman Schultz's campaign events, and that picture was taken. And it was also ruled by a judge that the Broward election supervisor, Brenda Snipes, illegally destroyed ballots in Debbie Wasserman Schultz's race. This was at the same time that these ballots, the very same ballots, were the subject of a lawsuit against the office that was brought on by Debbie Wasserman Schultz's opponent. So a close ally of Debbie Wasserman Schultz from Broward County. These are just the instances where they were caught doing these illegal activities, and yet the mainstream media and Democrats have said there's absolutely nothing going on, and it is wrong for President Trump to even bring up the problem of voter fraud or for anybody to investigate it. So Stacey Abrams and the CIA-backed Washington Post still seem to be trying to push this narrative. The Washington Post has also, of course, hired John Podesta, the campaign manager of Hillary Clinton's failed presidential run, as a contributor. And, of course, the Washington Post, who hired Podesta and all of these other Clinton allies, has been pushing the same narrative from the Democrats that any attempt by the Republicans to address voter fraud is somehow voter suppression. So here are some of the specific things that Abrams said. Stacey Abrams, 45 years old, who became the first black woman to win a major party nomination for governor last year, brought the crowd to its feet when she said she would be happy to be the running mate of the eventual Democrat nominee. She has expressed her interest in the vice presidency since announcing in August that she would not run for president or for one of the 2 U.S. Senate seats on the Georgia ballot next year. Abrams also claimed that the Voting Rights Act of 1965 had made it harder for states with a history of discrimination to enact restrictive laws and policies, but it was weakened, she said, by a Supreme Court decision in 2013. Since then, she has said that most Republican elected officials have moved quickly to shutter polling places, enact tough voter ID laws, and remove millions from the voting rolls. Abrams also pushed back on the notion that such laws to address voter fraud were needed. She's arguing that they're not needed to counteract voter fraud. She said that voter fraud, as described by defenders of such policies, is a myth. Stacey Abrams says that the entire idea of voter fraud is a myth, and the real intent is to discourage women, people of color, and young people from voting. Officials then punish people for not voting, Abrams said, citing laws that purge those who haven't voted in the past several elections from the voting rolls. She went on to use voter suppression as an excuse for her own loss. She cited voter suppression in her narrow loss to Republican Brian Kemp, who continued to serve as Georgia's Secretary of State while he ran for governor. So that's still the argument coming from the Democrats, that voter fraud somehow does not exist and is a myth, and yet at the same time, any attempt to investigate voter fraud or take any measure to address the problem is somehow suppression against the Democrats, yet they will not come up with any type of alternative to the voter ID laws or other measures proposed by Republicans. Democrats just say that it's not a problem and nothing should be done and it shouldn't even be looked at. Remember that Democrats recently said that they were shocked when a Michigan election official who was also a Democrat was arrested and charged with felony election fraud. Sherekia Hawkins, 38 years old, was charged with 6 felony criminal counts, including falsifying records, forgery of a public record, misconduct in office, and 3 counts of using a computer to commit a crime. And interestingly, just months before she was arrested on charges of voter fraud in connection with her oversight of the November 2018 election, Hawkins had been praised just 4 months earlier by the Michigan Democrat Party. Democrats gave this award to Sherekia Hawkins just before she was arrested and charged with voter fraud. Also looking at a mysterious new voter fraud case in Minnesota that has to do with the 2018 election. This new article here reads, Hennepin County prosecutors have charged Abdahakim Amin Essa, 22 years old, who is not a citizen but is a permanent resident, with 13 counts of felony voting fraud. In 2018, Essa falsified 13 absentee ballot applications and tried to cast one himself. During that time, Essa worked on a campaign of a local politician, but prosecutors won't reveal the name of the politician that Essa was allegedly working for or that politician's party. According to the criminal complaint, on July 30th, 2018, Essa brought a prospective voter into the Hennepin County Government Center. This prospective voter didn't have a proper identification, and then later returned with a different helper, not Essa, and a new application with a different address. The next day, Essa returned to the government center, but this time he was the prospective voter and someone else was the helper. The election workers recognized Essa, and then Essa, quote, got nervous and acted as if he did not understand English. Once election workers were wise to Essa's shenanigans, they looked through 9,000 absentee ballots and found that 13 had Essa signing his own name or his father's name, his father is a U.S. citizen, as a witness. The county then notified the voters who were on the absentee ballots and told them that they would have to vote again, but none did. This article concludes asking some interesting questions and again speaking to the wider problem of voter fraud. They say the facts of this case are shocking. Already we've just learned that one non-citizen can fraudulently vouch for at least 13 people to vote who clearly were not citizens themselves, and the falsifying of the 13 absentee ballots was only caught because election officials knew to look for Essa's name due to his brazenly suspicious activity. How easy is it to cast an absentee ballot? How many other absentee ballots are falsified and never caught? Even more troubling is the connection between Essa and what appears to be an organized scheme to commit voter fraud. Why aren't prosecutors looking into the politician and political party that Essa was working for? Did the candidate or party know about this organized effort? They also note that this comes as the Minnesota Voters Alliance is suing Minnesota's Democrat Secretary of State, Steve Simon, for voter registration data that could help show the extent of voter fraud in Minnesota. Simon, in contravention of state law, has been refusing to release that information. I wonder why. Many claim, without evidence, that fraudulent voting does not exist, and that instances such as these are isolated. But the people who make these claims really don't know, because nobody knows for sure, but we should know for sure. These absentee ballots have been a problem in other states as well. New Mexico Republicans are currently suing in order to confront this election fraud that is ongoing. It was recently found there that qualified absentee ballots actually did not include required voter information, and yet they were qualified. We think we're speaking for all voters, not just Republican voters, Pierce said in addressing this issue, the New Mexican Republican Party chairman. Let me know what you think about any of these voter fraud related arrests and other charges, or the panicked response by Democrats like Stacey Abrams and the mainstream media. Anything else related, tell me what you think in a comment. If you could leave a like on this video, that's greatly appreciated, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. In the video description are links to my Patreon and PayPal accounts where you can support the channel directly. Even $1 or $2 makes a huge difference, helps me keep talking about these issues. Let me know what you think. I'll follow up soon. Thanks.